Why can we accept new actors replacing earlier actors in the same role? Why do we find a new actor replacing a different character so objectionable? There's a new actor playing Batman every several years. The same goes for Superman, the Doctor, and James Bond. When it's time for a new actor to play Superman or Bond, we all speculate on who it might be and get excited about a new actor in a familiar role. Yet, if a studio tries to replace the original actor for a different character, say Indiana Jones, the die-hard fans would be outraged. Young actors portrayed Indy in flashbacks and such, but never on the core level, and never to the extent that James Bond had been replaced. So why is this? Is there any rhyme or reason to it? The difference between changing actors for James Bond and changing actors for someone like Indiana Jones is how we relate to these characters. Jones allows us to form more of an emotional bond with him, to the point that we find it difficult to imagine him with a different face. We accepted a young actor playing Indiana Jones in Last Crusade and in the TV series, but certainly not as a real replacement for Harrison Ford. Think about it. Think about how we relate to each character. James Bond is not realistic. That is not a slam on Bond's characters or the films, but his instantaneous sexual escapades and impossible stunts make it difficult for the audience to connect with Bond on a personal level. We don't see ourselves in Bond. We can't be Bond. He's as much a superhero as Batman. Bond is a straight male fantasy. He's not a relatable character. He's not meant to be. He's a highly implausible ideal. Indiana Jones's adventures are not realistic. After all, he finds magic artifacts, but the character is realistic. He's just a man. Batman is a mask. Superman is a cape. Bond is a tuxedo. Under Jones's hat and jacket, he feels like a real man. He's well educated and brave, but that's the extent of it. In fact, he often falls flat on his butt. Jones makes lots of mistakes like a normal human being. Remember the beginning of Raiders of the Lost Ark? Jones requires backup to enter the Cave of the Idol. Then, when he finds the golden idol, he tries to estimate how much it weighs so he can use a bag of sand to make the switch. Gold is heavy, very heavy, yet he foolishly tries to replace it with a tiny pouch of sand, even letting some of it drop to the ground before making the change. He screws it up pretty badly. Then, he is fooled by one of his guides and nearly gets himself killed in a pit. He pulls himself up in pathetic, comical fashion. Finally, covered with cobwebs and looking like death, he exits the cave only to find out he has been completely outsmarted by Belloc, who has been quicker and smarter than Jones in his plan to capture the idol. Also, Jones doesn't even speak Jovitos. What a maroon. He runs for his life, screams like a little girl, splashes unceremoniously into the water, and is only saved by his pilot, who is so important that he is never seen again. Also, he is deathly afraid of a trained snake. Pet snakes are typically defanged, but he throws a conniption fit because he is human and humans have big fears. Bond just stares blankly at things. He's unemotional. Still not convinced? Forget Raiders of the Lost Ark for a second. What about Temple of Doom? In the beginning of that movie, Jones drinks poison from his rival, brilliant move there, and threatens to murder a woman with a fork. He is saved, but only thanks to a child. A little boy saves Indiana Jones. He can't save himself. He needs data from Goonies. Following all this, he mistakenly boards a plane owned by his nemesis, and he only gets out of that mess due to a screenwriter breaking all laws of physics. Compare this to the opening scene from License to Kill. James Bond hangs upside down on a giant hook attached to a helicopter and affixes it to a plane because, well, he can just do that. Then he parachutes into his friend's wedding, saving the day and a marriage. James Bond is supernaturally capable, and we, as an audience, can aspire to be him, but we can't relate to him. That means we don't mind when he is suddenly portrayed by a different actor. We have not connected to him emotionally the way we have with Indiana Jones. Now, in spite of these examples, some might say that Indiana Jones and James Bond are still roughly the same because they always get the girl. Except that really isn't accurate. Jones is handsome, but his track record with women is spotty at best. In Raiders, it is implied that years ago he and Marion Ravenwood were romantically involved, despite the fact that Marion was, in her own words, a child at the time. This is clearer in an earlier draft of the script. You know, that Indy had sex with an underage girl, but it is still mentioned in passing in Raiders. He and Marion get together only towards the end of the movie, and they don't reunite and get married until the tail end of the 4th film. What about the other Jones women? He and Willie Scott never really had a relationship. There was a moment when it looked like they might sleep together, but Jones was far too busy being strangled to death. That's something that just happens to him sometimes. In Last Crusade, he is interested in Elsa Schneider, but is soon revealed that A, she's a Nazi, and B, Indy's father slept with her recently as well. Gross. That is not something likely to happen to James Bond, but Indiana Jones is like the rest of us, a history of wins and losses in the romantic world, complete with a few awkward sexual encounters. Again, relatable. Comparatively, in GoldenEye, James Bond beds his associate the day that they meet. She is assigned to examine him, and in a roundabout way, she does just that. This is typical for Bond. Even in the grittier, more recent Bond films, 007 still performs superhuman parkour without so much as twisting an ankle. He casually adjusts his cuffs as explosions occur behind him. Bond is aloof and uninterested. Jones is emotional and human. Besides, the new Bond does not erase half a century of the perception of Bond as a superhero. Again, none of this is meant to put one character over another or say one series is better than the other or who would win in a steel cage match or any other childish nonsense like that. It's also not meant to put Bond on a pedestal or highlight Jones as a screw-up. Quite the contrary. The point is that we form emotional attachments to characters, often through sympathy and how we relate to them. When it was time for a 4th Indiana Jones movie, Lucas and Spielberg didn't think to replace Ford with a young, more relevant actor. The fans would not accept this. Fans accept a new Bond, new Superman, new Batman, new Doctor, new lots of characters, but not a new Indiana Jones movie with a new actor playing Indiana Jones. A 5th movie is a possibility, and nobody is even considering anyone playing Indy but Harrison Ford. We have grown to love Jones so much that we need to recognize him. He has become part of our shared culture, and someone else in the fedora just doesn't feel right. Sometimes we need people to inspire us, fictional or otherwise, but figures that seem a little more human can mean more to us. We naturally want heroes, of course, but if our aspirations are attainable, like becoming an educator who wants to see the world, that hero can become that much more real and that much more important in our lives.